right, you guys. We're gonna start the meeting up real soon. Um, so, hi. Welcome to the second general meeting for the Game Dev Club. If you guys don't recognize me, I was the webmaster from last meeting, and I was also previously the president. So if you guys recognize me, that's what you recognize me from. I'll be leading sort of this presentation today. I've been leading it for the past few semesters, so because some of our board members had to be at a different meeting. So welcome in. All right, so today's meeting, we are going to be going over the game pitches, which is the semesterly projects that we do for the club. We're also going to be talking about what an MVP is. Again, MVP stands for minimum viable product, and that is something that we are going to get into sort of more of what that means. But first, we do have a few announcements. So we are going to be hosting our first workshop this Friday. We're basically going to be recreating an ice game, similar to like those ice games you would play like an ice gym in the Pokemon games, something really similar to that. We're going to be building in the Godot game engine, so this is very useful for anyone who is sort of interested in using Godot, whether that be you're transferring over from Unity or if this is going to be your very first game engine. We're going to start from the very beginning, from sort of teaching you what the Godot engine looks like, all of the tabs and everything, how to control movement, everything, the coding, how to import assets, everything essentially. There is going to be free pizza at this meeting, so even if you already know about Godot, if you want to just come and hang out, that'd be really fun too. It's going to be held this Friday, September 9th from 3 to 5 p.m., same time as when we had our game night last week, and it's going to be in Building 6, Room 113. For those of you who don't know, Building 6, if Building 8 is sort of right here, if you go straight across the lawn diagonally, that's going to be Building 6. Same thing as usual with just like our general meetings, we are going to be hosting it through Discord as well, for those of you who won't be able to attend the in-person meeting. And if you just won't be able to attend the meeting in general, that's fine, because we always record the general meetings for you. That way, if you ever want to miss it, or if you want to revisit some of the stuff we covered over the workshop, you could always just catch it on our YouTube channel. We have decided where to hold our club social. So according to that interest form you guys had to do last week, we are going to be holding our club social over at Round 1. So that's going to take place on Friday, September 23rd. We're going to meet there around 4 p.m. Carpool will be available. We're going to send out a sort of a carpool form for anyone who's interested in hosting a carpool, especially if you live here on campus and need a ride to get over to Round 1. If you are a VIP member with us, which we discussed in the previous meeting, you get a free $12 arcade card to go ahead and use the arcade. So we are going to have a sign-up form, both for the club social and for the carpool that's going to be found in our server. One of the officers is going to send that in a bit. Here it is again, for those of you who don't know what it is to be a VIP member. It's basically a way for you to support the club. It is going to be $15 for the semester or $25 for the whole year. Some of the benefits is you do get a free club shirt. You get priority or discounts for some club trips, studio tours, and social. So a good example is that social we have for Round 1. If you're a member with us, you do get that free $12 arcade card. If you're graduating this semester or this year, you will be receiving a stole. And if you plan to run for the e-board next year, you will be able to run for board next year. So feel free to talk to our treasurer or president to sign up for our VIP memberships. Right now, I don't think both of them are here, so you can just come up to me because I handled it years previous. So just let me know if you have any questions about that. All right, and the game pitches are going to be next week. So like I said, these are our semester-long projects. Basically, you join a team and pitches will be made and uploaded to YouTube if you guys are unable to attend the club meeting. Participating in these projects look great on resumes. Even if you don't finish it, it's just like a great way to show people that you are able to work on a project as a team, that you have worked on games in the past. And if you have a game idea that you want to present to the club, feel free to present it on our general meeting next week. All right, so before we get into MVPs, we're going to be talking about our club goals. So besides sort of the game pitch, we do have like an overarching goal for the club. So first off, let's talk about game design. So what is game design? So game design encompasses all aspects that go into game development. So that includes programming, art, music or SFX, and writing. So we want to heavily stress that this club isn't just for like CS majors or those who are interested in programming. This is really open to anyone who's interested in making art, music, writing, programming, any of the stuff that would go into game development. So for when it comes to programming, that could mean anything from the game engine, such as Unity, Godot, Unreal, Game Maker, RPG Maker, any of those engines. Could be about the language, so C# for Unity. Godot uses GDScript, Python if you code in RenPy, things like that. We could be talking about game mechanics, like does your character collect a coin? What kind of attacks you can make? Gameplay features is sort of similar to the same thing. And of course, like UI, UX, sort of the user interface of your game. What can your players see when you guys are interacting with your game? Next, we have art. We're going to be talking about sort of character designs for your games, how to make backgrounds, props, and how to do concept art. So these are some examples of concept art from previous video games. So this one right here is obviously the concept art for the Reaver Vandal for those of you who play Valorant. This right here is character design art for Gwen from League of Legends. And then this one right here is actually concept art for Destiny 2. So that's sort of the stuff that we want to touch into, and we want to sort of broaden everyone's aspect. So even if you aren't necessarily good at art, if you are interested in becoming better at it, if you want to develop your own games that way, we will be sort of going over all of that stuff. Whoops. So music and SFX. So for that, we're talking about soundtrack. What kind of music are you using to back your games? We're talking about sound effects, talking about Foley, which is sort of essentially using live recorded sound effects to add into your games or into your music. And of course, we're obviously talking about ambience. Some really good examples, obviously, the soundtrack for Undertale, written by Toby Fox, is amazing. It's one of the best, honestly, in my opinion, one of the best soundtracks in the game. I'm just really into sort of the very retro style that Toby Fox uses. The very iconic emergency meeting sound effect, that kind of like when you're playing Among Us silently, and then all of a sudden there's a really loud blaring siren effect. And then I just added one of my favorite ones, the low health music that plays in Pokemon Black and White specifically. They really didn't have to go that hard because every previous generation and then the generation right after Black and White still uses like the really simple beeping noise to indicate that you have low health, but Black and White was just like, let's make it a jam, and it sounds incredible. So next, we'll talk about writing. So that includes the story of your game, what kind of dialogue your characters are having in game, because that's really important too to sort of develop your characters. What kind of lore and world building are sort of going into your game? Like, are you going to be making that available to your players? A lot of writing is just basically making the game feel alive for your players. So a good examples I have right here is I have Red Dead Redemption 2, which I think has a fantastic story. You could be really extra, and you could be like in Skyrim, where Bethesda writers just essentially wrote books inside of inside of the video game, and you could read those books whenever, and they're like fully fledged serialized books. Or you could be like sort of Legend of Zelda as a franchise as a whole, with their like sort of their branching timelines, their sort of whole lore around Ganon and everything like that. So that's everything that you could include in a game. So going back to one of our club goals is that our goal is to have all of our members be well-rounded game designers. So we want to keep stressing that no experience is needed to be a part of this club, like at all, as long as you're interested in becoming a game developer or in becoming involved in the industry. We want to help you guys sort of pursue that path. So yeah, so no experience is needed. We will teach members all we know about every aspect of game development. So that's all of that aspects we included right there. Okay, so if you want to be a game designer or sort of, if you want to get interested in that sort of thing, as mentioned previously, we are going to have our first workshop focused on the Godot game engine this coming Friday. So one thing is just in general, is meetings and workshops are just sort of a great way to get information about game design and development. As well as obviously you could seek outside resources. I know when I first started using, so Godot is my main game engine. When I first started working on that, I learned that through Somerville's game development class that he held here. And obviously I learned through YouTube as well, because there's a lot of really great tutorials. I really encourage you guys to seek out those tutorials because they're honestly really great. As mentioned previously, our semester team projects are the game pitches. It's another great way to sort of put what you learned in the club sort of in the field into practice. And by the end of the semester, our goal is to create a game MVP or a minimum viable product. So let's talk about what a minimum viable product is. So according to Google, a minimum viable product is a version of a product with just enough features to be usable by early customers who can provide feedback for future product development. So that's a super, really generic the definition for MVP because it could be used for other products as well. So for like car design or for general products like phones, things like that. But what does this mean for game development? So an MVP is a really basic version of a game with just the key gameplay features needed to gain interest in its development. So essentially, we're providing a proof for a game. We're showing you guys all of the mechanics that would go into a game if it works, and then theoretically would show those to consumers, and consumers will sort of give feedback whether or not they like the gameplay features, if it works for them, if there's something more that they can add. That's sort of the goal of the MVP. So as I keep saying, the goal is to make an MVP by the end of the semester. And of course, if you guys have time, you guys are more than welcome to add more details to your game. So that's like sound effects, music, a bit more writing, a bit more graphics, anything like that. But the most important thing is to sort of just get that MVP, those basic mechanics out of the way. So there is a really great video on YouTube made by Extra Credits that talks about the minimum viable product. It's a video that we show every single year ever since I was a freshman. And I just think it's the reason why we use it every year is because it's just a great video. So I hope this plays. Oh no, this is only playing in my earphones. Hold on, give me a second. Let's see. This is only playing in my earphones and I want you guys to hear it.
During the last two episodes, we've stressed how important it is to make your first game something small. But this is so important that this time we're going to dedicate the entire episode to it. This will serve you in good stead not only when you're creating your first game, but also when prototyping for anything else you do. In development, there's a term called minimum viable product, which refers to the smallest thing you can possibly make that'll still give you useful data once released. That should be your goal. Even when James is called in to work on a multi-million-dollar project that has a development time of 3 years, one of the first things he'll tell them is that if they don't have a prototype up in the first 3 weeks, they're doing it wrong. When you can actually play your game, you'll discover all sorts of things that you didn't account for when you were just designing the game in your head. You'll find edge cases where your mechanics are broken, or places where your game just falls apart. You'll find what's really engaging rather than just trying to build something that you hope is engaging. And you'll discover what will add the most to the experience you're creating. Okay, so you've heard me say cut and cut and cut, and that when you think you're done cutting, you're probably not done cutting. But you do have to stop cutting sometime. So how do we determine when we're down to that minimum viable product? Well, this one is a bit tough, and you're going to get better at it with experience. But the basic idea is to find the absolute minimum set of features that won't affect core development. If you could cut a feature and still technically ship your game, it's probably not part of your minimum viable product. But because this is as much an art as it is a science, let's run through some examples so we're all on the same footing. Let's start with Super Mario Brothers. What do we need in order to test if the fundamental gameplay of Super Mario Brothers is engaging? What's the minimum that we can build and test before deciding if what we have is something worth expanding upon with additional features? Well, do we need Koopas? No. Fire flowers? Nope. Bowser? Nope. Pipes that you can climb down? No. Pipes at all? No. Water levels, mushrooms, hidden blocks, extra lives? No. So what do we need? Well, for Mario, the minimum viable product is probably one level where you can move, jump, and fall into pits. That's it. If just that much is engaging, you'll be able to add all those other features later and make it even better. But if running along and jumping over pits doesn't feel good, Super Mario Brothers simply doesn't work, no matter how many extra features you throw in. So you've got to make sure that that core is working first. Although, in this particular case, I'd probably throw in two other features that aren't strictly necessary, but they will make a big difference. First, a trigger which resets the level if a player falls into the pit, just so testing is easier, and to make sure that this aspect isn't just unpalatable to players. And second, the ability to change from walking to running, since the Mario jump mechanic is so dependent on the run button. But that's it. One level, three features, and you've got a game. Don't believe something this simple could be engaging? Well, set the character to auto-run and you've basically built Cannabalt. When building your first game, or prototyping a larger one, you'll find that you can strip out all of the content, all of the things that aren't rules that control the play itself, but rather elements that are created out of those rules. So enemy types, levels, different weapons, all of that can usually get cut. You might want to include one thing from each category just to test the larger rules, but no more than that, because it's really easy to get mired down in making all that content. And the truth is, games with lots of content but without a solid foundation are rarely good. Perhaps worse, as a creator, when your game's packed with content, it's generally harder to figure out why the foundation's not working. If you test your prototype with a lot of content thrown in, it'll be harder for players to put their fingers on exactly what it is that needs improvement, as all of that content just clutters what's wrong. And they'll be more likely to tell you about bad pieces of content rather than the underlying reasons why that content didn't create a positive experience. It just adds complexity in a situation where you really need to be honing your game's core foundation. Okay, so let's try another one. Old school JRPGs. Now, this one can fool people because most designers tend to think of these games in terms of content rather than gameplay. It's easy to get caught up in the story you want to tell or the massive lists of items and enemies. But if the player has to slog through 80 hours of weak gameplay in order to access that story you've got in mind, you've done your player a disservice. In fact, that's some of what's contributed to the decline in the popularity of traditional JRPGs this decade. So take a game like Final Fantasy IV. Here, I would cut everything but the menu-based combat system. I would even cut out all the graphics. Monsters can just be words on the screen. That's really all you need to test the system. Now, many of you might object, saying, but that doesn't work. I can't make that engaging without the content. This is actually great, though. It immediately tells us that we should probably find a more robust system. All right, let's try one more. This time, let's look at Ikaruga. Here, we could probably cut down to the color switching mechanic, an enemy which switches color randomly and shoots random bullet patterns, or maybe randomly chooses from a small list of pre-built bullet patterns, as that wouldn't be too hard to construct. Also, you'll need the ability for the player to move and to shoot, a counter which ticks upward as you shoot the enemy, and a death mechanic that simply resets the game when the player gets hit. This will get you all the player behavior you need to find out if your game's engaging. Your players will try to dodge and shoot the enemy while attempting to take advantage of the color swapping system as much as possible. That's all you need. Hopefully, that helps you frame your thinking about just how small your first project should be. Now I'm going to give you a quick and dirty list of game genres ordered by how difficult they are to create a minimum viable product for. And this is only going to apply to digital games. Some of these genres are actually much easier to build pen and paper or board games for. Also, this list isn't by any means absolute. As game engines change, this list is going to become outdated, but it should give you a place to start at least. So, game genres in order of difficulty to produce a minimum viable product, from simplest to most difficult. Racing game, top-down shooter, 2D platformer, color matching puzzle game, 2D puzzle platformer, 3D platformer, FPS, JRPG, fighting game, action adventure, Western RPG, RTS. I'm leaving out point-and-click adventure games here, as those games are entirely built out of content. So while getting a point-and-click game up and running is relatively easy, getting anything together that'll actually tell you if you're onto something engaging is a lot harder. You'll notice I'm also leaving out anything networked or multiplayer, as that generally multiplies the complexity. Honestly, I would just recommend avoiding multiplayer stuff entirely for your first game. And again, don't think of these genres in terms of the games you know. When I say racing game, don't think Gran Turismo. Think two gray blocks on a black background with acceleration and collision mechanics. That is all you need to hit that minimum viable product or prototype stage, where you can really start to get it out there and play it, learn what's needed to improve it. You can always build from there later and add more cool features, but your game will be better off for having spent the time testing and refining the foundation of your game idea. This is way more productive than dreaming up a project which is far too big to ever tackle. Hopefully that helps you decide where to start and how far to scope down. Join us on the next episode for what to do once you're done with your game. See you then.
All right, so this video is from 6 years ago. So some of the stuff, in my opinion, is kind of outdated. Like the whole don't try multiplayer. We've had people do multiplayer before. If you've ever tried the game demo for Tank Fort, that's a multiplayer. Well, it's like a local multiplayer game, but it still works. And obviously, if you want to add some more stuff, you are more than welcome. It's just the most important thing is you need to have those basic aspects present in your game. That way we could sort of see to make sure that everything works correctly. All right. So yeah, any questions about sort of how that works or about the slides in general so far? All right. No, we already watched that video. Stop. Okay. So yeah, we are not expecting a fully polished game by the end of the semester. So we really want to stress this a lot because in all honesty, yes. And to be truthful, a lot of us struggle to create a game by the end of the semester, and it's no big deal if you can't finish what you need by the end. A good example is last year, fall 2021, I had pitched a game. Unfortunately, we couldn't get out as much as the game that as I wanted, so I wasn't able to present it by the end of the banquet. And that's something that happens every year. You're going to have games that unfortunately won't be able to make it to the end. And that's fine because that's sort of the way, you make mistakes and then you learn from them. And obviously, there's always a chance for you to pick it up again and then to sort of redo the game as how you want it to be. If you do make a polished game by the end of the semester, be proud of yourself. That's great. That's fantastic if you're able to make that, especially like on top of like school and work. We want to prioritize obviously your personal life, your school, and your work. That's sort of what I mentioned earlier. That always has to come first. So if you don't pressure yourself into thinking that this is like a full-time thing that you have to be doing this, it's just a club and it's just for fun and it's just for learning. So don't feel pressure to pull out a like AAA game by the end of the semester. Okay, so let's go into more about the game pitches. So like we mentioned earlier, September 13th, which is next week, is going to be our game pitch meeting. If you guys have an idea for a game, feel free. No experience is needed to pitch a game. If you've heard Enzo, when he was a freshman, he pitched a game and then it turned out really good. He had no prior experience. So again, like even if you're a freshman, no matter what experience level you are, just feel free to pitch a game if you guys have an idea for it. I'm sure people will want to join in and make that game. So we'll go over some examples of some of the game pitches, but a general sort of template for how to what to have in your game pitch is sort of the name of your game, the genre of your game. So is it like a platformer? Is it a visual novel? Is it a top-down shooter? A two-sentence pitch for your game. So this is sort of if you were to give, it's like if you've ever heard of the term elevator pitch. If you're in an elevator full of like game developer executives, what is your two-sentence pitch that will get them interested in your game? That's sort of what it means. Obviously, we want a full summary of your game. If it's like a story-based game, like tell us about the story or like sort of the premise of your game, what the idea is, and then just sort of a list of the gameplay features you want to be included in your MVP to sort of present to the club by the end of the semester. So I am going to go over. We do have this document. We'll probably send this out, which is basically a full document that talks about what to put in your game pitch and sort of how the game pitch works. So we'll sort of go over how that works. So it goes over what is a game pitch, how to get started, your game idea, concepts, presentation, the team. Well, this is kind of outdated. That's no longer the team lead application. We'll change that later. Talking about the MVP again, but yeah, it's like a really general outline of what to do. And we have some examples of ones from before. So now that Larry's here, do you want to? Okay. This is the only microphone you have, so speak really closely to this.
So this is the game that I did fall last year, and basically we wanted to remake the We Play Tanks mini game. I don't know if you guys have seen that in some of the game demos that we've shown off, but yeah, so it could be as like funny or as serious as you want it to be. I went with funny because that's just how I operate. I don't know if I'm actually funny, but yeah, so I kind of start off with like a little story. This is all kind of irrelevant, so you could keep skipping past it. We play tanks, greatest achievement to mankind. And then, so yeah, why did I want to make this game? For you guys, it's like if you want to make an FPS because you want to make something like Doom or something like that. So yeah, that's I gave my reasons as to why. And then you can go to the next slide. And then I kind of went into some inspirations, especially if you're making like your own type of game, if it's not a remake or anything. This is a really good slide to have. Like something I added was Enter the Gungeon because I like how they do their top-down shooting. So for other stuff, like I know I pitched an FPS the semester before. I mentioned stuff like Doom or Risk of Rain. So that's also, it's great to have references just so you sort of like give an idea to the club, like what kind of experience you want to make. And this is sort of the goals that we wanted to have. So this is sort of the overall experience. What ended up happening is we did most of these goals. You don't have to reach all of these goals to make the game. We were able to give it like the different types of tanks, the top-down shooting mechanics. We slowed down the gameplay a bit. And the last point was, I don't know what the last point was, I can't remember, but but yeah, so it's sort of just like your rundown of what you want to accomplish. And then next up, this is sort of like if you have like more time to do this, this is sort of like stretch goals, kind of like on Kickstarter. Yeah, so it's just adding like co-op, new enemy types, power-ups, and score counter. We weren't able to implement any of these because we were sort of crushed for time for the main features, but these were like nice bonuses to have if we wanted to actually implement them. And then for here, you sort of want to list off like what sort of engine you want to use. If you're not entirely sure, that's perfectly fine, and you don't have to commit to a specific engine. So for here, I mentioned we wanted to use Unity, and then I suggested Blender for 3D modeling. Instead of when I looked up Blender on Google, it gave me a picture of an actual Blender instead of the software. But yeah, so sort of give like a rundown of what type of software you're expecting your teammates to know or to learn while you do this project. And then just sort of like, who do you want on your team? Because depending on the project, you want different things. Like I know with Sam's project, it was a dating sim. So she wanted more story writers, more artists, that sort of thing. For us, we wanted more programmers, more art, more 3D modelers, that sort of thing. But really like this project was more of a beginner friendly, on the more beginner friendly end, since it was like just top down shooting. And not to say that it was easy, but it was like a lot more easier to get into rather than other sorts of projects. And yeah, that's pretty much it for my game pitch.
I'll go over an example of a game pitch that couldn't get finished, which was my game pitch, which was, as Larry mentioned, was the dating simulator. So did not have an idea. All I know is I wanted to make a dating sim. So I was like, another thing is, again, it's like always fun to make your presentations funny. So I like ask if anyone has like any questions, like, are you tired of boring visual novels? You hate long, unmeaningful dialogue, more engaging, and then you want to fall in love, etc. Like just like sort of like trying to get people engaged. And then I didn't have a title of the game at this point, so it was called Not So Generic Dating Simulator. And then sort of just introducing myself. Again, like what Larry had in his slide, sort of inspirations for what the games took. Like How to Fool Boyfriend was like where you date birds, like Jurassic Heart where you date. I just wanted it to be really silly and really funny. Monster Primer Camp, I Love You, Colonel Sanders, and then like Honey Pop, which is really funny and is interesting gameplay, and there's nothing else that's suspicious about that game. There's no pick for Honey Pop because it's very appropriate actually. Just trust me. So what should the game look like? Again, I didn't really have an idea, so I just sort of pitched like, what kind of things can you date in this game? So like creatures, fruits or vegetables, like anthropomorphs, anything. And then I like had an idea. Of like all of the characters you could date. Wait, hold on. Loki, we should date the CLA because it's gone now. So maybe that's a good idea for a game. Someone should make a CLA game because it's gone now. So again, like what are you looking for? And then like just sort of what I want to include. Again, like all of the stuff that we go through. For the game, we wanted to code it in RenPy because it's sort of like a really famous game engine for dating sim. So obviously some of the more famous ones are Katawa Shoujo and Doki Doki Literature Club are one of like the most famous ones made on RenPy. And then I just said Twine because it's like a really good way to like visualize branching story paths. We didn't really end up using it. But it was still something fun to do. If you guys are ever interested in Twine, it's actually really fun to use. And then who am I helping? Again, this. And then, yeah, like Larry said, I was mostly looking for artists because it wasn't a super like program heavy game. It was super simple because it's coded in mostly Python, which is like a pretty simple language to understand. So yeah, so that was, and again, as I stated before, I don't have a demo for this game because unfortunately we couldn't get it out in time. So it's sort of an example of don't feel pressured to get out a game because sometimes things work and sometimes things don't, and that's perfectly fine because that's gonna end up happening anyway. So yeah, that's okay. Well, I already showed the examples. Okay, so that should be it for today's meeting. If you guys have any questions about anything, let us know. But yeah. If you guys are interested in the VIP thing, just speak to any of us up here. If you guys have more questions about the game pitches, feel free to ask. Again, a lot of us here on the board have experience with doing the game pitches and like just making games in general. So if you guys have any questions about anything, just let us know. But yeah, Other than that, the meeting is adjourned.